It's kind of wild to think about, but just 20 years after Athens and Sparta fought side by side to save Greece from the Persian Empire, they were at each other's throats. Now, this isn't the big, famous Peloponnesian War you probably learned about in school. This is the first one, a brutal 15-year conflict that absolutely shredded their golden alliance and redrew the map of the ancient world. So let's get into how it all fell apart.
And that's the big question here, isn't it? How does that happen? How do you go from being heroes who saved the world together to mortal enemies? Well, the answer isn't just one big battle or one betrayal. It's more like a domino effect, a chain reaction of fear, pride, and the unavoidable collision of two cities that were polar opposites. You see, this whole story doesn't start on a battlefield. It starts with the ground itself shaking. The first crack in this great alliance wasn't made by a sword or a trireme. Nope. It was a massive earthquake that revealed a deep, fatal mistrust that had been bubbling just under the surface. So here's how it goes down. Around 464 BC, a catastrophic earthquake absolutely devastates Sparta. Seeing their chance, their huge population of enslaved people, the Helots, rise up in revolt. The Spartans, who are legendary soldiers but terrible at siege warfare, get desperate and call their allies for help. Athens answers the call, sending 4,000 of their best soldiers. But then comes the ultimate slap in the face. Sparta, for reasons we'll get into, looks at the Athenians and tells only them to turn around and go home. And the historian Thucydides, our main source for this whole thing, tells us exactly why. It wasn't about military tactics, it was about ideology. You see, Sparta was this super rigid, conservative society built on keeping the Helots down. They looked at the democratic, free-thinking Athenians and got terrified that their revolutionary ideas might spread to the very people they had enslaved. They feared Athenian ideas more than they needed Athenian soldiers. It was a massive public humiliation. Well, as you can imagine, Athens was absolutely furious. They didn't just write an angry letter. They completely upended the politics of Greece. They tore up their old alliance with Sparta and immediately turned around and made a new alliance with Argos, Sparta's oldest and most hated enemy. And just like that, the first domino falls. So, this Cold War of insults and broken alliances turns hot because of a tiny but incredibly important city-state that was caught right in the middle, Megara. The choice Megara makes is going to tip the next domino, and it's going to escalate this whole thing from a war of words into a real shooting war. Now, let's be honest, Megara didn't really have much of a choice. They were getting bullied by their powerful neighbor, Corinth, who was one of Sparta's biggest allies. Megara asked Sparta for help, but Sparta did nothing. So, with their backs against the wall, they did the only thing they could. They ditched Sparta's league and ran into the arms of Athens. For Athens, this was a brilliant move, a total game changer. By getting Megara on their side, they basically slammed a door shut on the land route into their home territory, Attica. Now the Spartan army couldn't just march up and attack them. Plus, it gave Athens a brand new port on the other side of Greece, the Corinthian Gulf, letting their powerful navy cause trouble in Sparta's backyard. And this move didn't just block Sparta, it absolutely enraged Corinth. Thucydides tells us this was the exact moment when Corinth's dislike for Athens boiled over into a deep, bitter hatred that would drive the conflict for years. The chain reaction was really picking up steam now. Okay, so the stage is set, the pieces are in motion, and the war is on. And in these early years, Athens was just unstoppable. They went on such an incredible winning streak that historians actually call this period their annus mirabilis, their miracle year. I mean, look at this. They dominated sea, absolutely smashing a rival navy. Then, okay, they meet the Spartan army on land at Tanagra and lose. No surprise there, it's the Spartans. But here's the crazy part. Just 62 days later, the Athenians march right back into that same territory and win a massive, crushing victory at Oenphyta. The resilience is just incredible. And just to give you an idea of their naval power, in that one battle against Aegina, the Athenians captured 70, that's 70, enemy ships. 70. With one victory, they basically wiped a major naval rival off the map and secured total control of the seas near their home. And after that amazing comeback at Oenphyta, Athens didn't stop. They just kept going, rolling over central Greece, conquering Boeotia, Phocis, and Locris. All of a sudden, Athens wasn't just a sea power anymore. For this one shining moment, they were a land empire too. They were on top of the world. But you know what they say, the bigger they are, the harder they fall. And empires built that fast can fall apart even faster.
Athenian ambition had gotten the better of them, and one huge, catastrophic mistake was about to bring their miracle year to a screeching halt. So here it is, the fatal error. While all of this was going on in Greece, while they were fighting Sparta and Corinth and all their allies, Athens had also sent a gigantic fleet and thousands of soldiers all the way to Egypt. They were trying to fight two massive wars on two different fronts, thousands of miles apart. It was a huge gamble. And in 454 BC, that gamble failed. Horribly. After being trapped and besieged for a year and a half, the Persian army finally overran the Athenian position. The entire force, all those ships, all those soldiers, was practically wiped out. It was a disaster on an epic scale, and it completely drained Athens of men and money. So while Athens is still reeling from Egypt, a fire breaks out right in their new backyard. The lands they had just conquered in Boeotia rise up in revolt. At the Battle of Coronea, the Athenian army is beaten, and just like that, the dream of a land empire that took years to build, it vanished in a single afternoon. And that defeat set off a chain reaction of collapse. Their enemies smelled blood in the water. Key allies started to revolt, including Megara, the very city that was their shield against Sparta. And to make everything worse, the Spartan army finally saw its chance and marched right into Attica. Athens was surrounded, weakened, and fighting for its very life. But somehow, Athens survived. Their leader, Pericles, managed to pull off a diplomatic miracle. He convinced the Spartan king to just turn around and go home. Now, a lot of historians think a very large bribe was involved. With the Spartans gone, Athens managed to put down the other revolts. But the war was a stalemate. Both sides were completely exhausted, and so they decided to talk. And the result was the 30 Years' Peace. It was a classic compromise. Athens had to give up all the territory it had won on the mainland, so goodbye land empire. But in a huge concession, Sparta and its allies officially recognized Athens' right to rule its massive maritime empire, the Delian League. So what this peace treaty really did was create a bipolar Greece. Power was now officially split down the middle. You had two superpowers, Sparta, the unstoppable elephant on land, and Athens, the untouchable whale in the sea. The lines were drawn, and everyone knew who was on which team. The board was officially reset. But here's the thing to leave you with. It was called the 30 Years' Peace. But it didn't even last 15 years before it all came crashing down into the even bigger, more famous Second Peloponnesian War. So you have to ask yourself, did this treaty really fix anything? Or was it just a pause button on a conflict between two powers that were always destined to fight to the finish?